The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning. It was sleek and silver, unlike anything humans had ever built. World leaders scrambled to respond. News channels showed the same images over and over. The strange vessel that dwarfed the International Space Station floating silently above them. After 3 days of tense waiting, the aliens finally made contact. They called themselves the Senacs. Their message was simple. They came in peace and wished to establish relations with Earth. Ethan Martinez watched the first broadcast of the alien king from the military base where he was stationed. King Zorlak appeared almost human, except for his iridescent blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights, and his striking golden eyes that had no pupils. The alien king spoke perfect English in a deep melodic voice. "We have watched your planet for many years," King Zorlak said. "We believe our peoples can help each other grow." Within weeks, Earth's governments chose Ambassador Jack Collins to represent humanity. Ethan, a former Marine with an excellent service record, was selected as part of the security team for the first diplomatic mission to the Senacs' homeworld. "This isn't what I signed up for," Ethan told his commanding officer the day before departure. "None of us signed up for aliens, Martinez," his captain replied with a shrug. "But here we are." The journey to the Senacs' homeworld took only 2 days in the alien ship. Ethan spent most of that time staring out the viewing windows at the stars streaking by, wondering how his life had taken such a strange turn. The Senacs' planet was beautiful, with purple skies and floating cities that reminded Ethan of science fiction movies he watched as a child. Their ship docked at the Royal Palace, a massive structure of crystal and strange metals that changed colors with the sunlight. Ambassador Collins led the human delegation down the ramp. Ethan stayed alert, his training keeping him focused despite the amazing sights. A group of Senacs officials waited for them, dressed in flowing robes with intricate patterns. King Zorlak stepped forward, taller than the other aliens. Beside him stood a female Senacs who had the same shimmering skin, but in a pale green shade. Her eyes were more gold than the others, and she wore an elaborate headpiece that marked her as royalty. "Welcome to Senaria," the king said. "This is my daughter, Princess Lyria, heir to the throne." The princess stepped forward, her movements graceful. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just slightly sharper than human ones. "It is an honor to meet our visitors from Earth," she said. Her voice was like music. "I have studied your world with great interest." Ambassador Collins bowed slightly. "The honor is ours, Your Highness." As the formal introductions continued, Ethan noticed the princess watching him. Her golden eyes seemed to study him with unusual intensity. He tried to maintain his professional demeanor, but something about her gaze made him uncomfortable. Later, during the welcome feast, Ethan stood at his post along the wall of the Grand Hall. The humans and Senacs sat together at a long table, sharing foods from both worlds. The princess kept glancing in his direction. Near the end of the meal, Princess Lyria approached King Zorlak and whispered something in his ear. The king looked surprised, then nodded slowly. Ambassador Collins was called over to speak with them. Ethan watched their conversation from a distance, noticing the ambassador's eyebrows rising in surprise. After the feast, Collins approached Ethan. "There's been a change of plans, Martinez," he said. "Sir?" "Princess Lyria has requested to visit Earth as part of our cultural exchange program." "That seems reasonable," Ethan replied, unsure why the ambassador looked concerned. "She specifically requested you as her personal guard during the visit." Ethan blinked in surprise. "Me? Why?" "I don't know," Collins said, "but the king has approved her request, and we can't really refuse. The Senacs have technology we desperately want access to." Ethan looked across the room where Princess Lyria was watching them. When their eyes met, she smiled. "Pack your things," Ambassador Collins said. "You're going to be spending a lot of time with an alien princess." Princess Lyria's royal ship landed at the special landing pad built just for the Senacs visitors. News cameras flashed as she stepped out, her green skin shimmering in the sunlight. Ethan stood stiffly beside her, still uncomfortable with his new role. "Your world has such a lovely blue sky," Lyria said, looking up. "On my planet, the sky is always purple." "Yes, Your Highness," Ethan replied formally. He kept scanning the crowd for any threats, his hand never far from his weapon. The princess frowned slightly. "You may call me Lyria when we are not at official events. I would like us to be friends during my stay." Ethan wasn't sure how to respond to that. His training hadn't covered making friends with alien royalty. Commander Vex, the princess's personal guard from her world, watched their interaction with narrowed golden eyes. He was taller than most Synax, with darker blue skin and an ever-present scowl. "Remember your place, human," Vex said quietly when Lyria walked ahead to greet the waiting Earth officials. The first week of the princess's visit was filled with tours of major cities. She visited museums, parks, and famous landmarks. Everywhere she went, crowds gathered to catch a glimpse of the alien royal. Ethan remained constantly at her side, growing more comfortable with each passing day. "Why do humans choose their own mates?" Lyria asked Ethan one afternoon as they walked through a quiet garden. The rest of her entourage followed at a respectful distance. Ethan blinked in surprise at the personal question. "Because we believe people should marry who they love, not who they're told to marry." "Love," Lyria repeated the word slowly. "Your language has so many words for feelings. In our world, royal marriages are arranged for political reasons. My father has already chosen who I will be bonded with." Something in her voice made Ethan look at her more closely. "You don't sound happy about that." Lyria's golden eyes met his. "The prince I am to bond with is from the Terex system. He is not kind." Before Ethan could respond, Commander Vex approached, ending their private conversation. That night, there was a formal dinner at the White House. Lyria wore elaborate robes with patterns that seemed to move in the light. Ethan stood against the wall, watching as Earth diplomats tried to impress the alien princess. Halfway through the meal, a man approached Ethan. "She keeps looking at you," said Greg Powell, another security officer. Ethan had noticed it too. The princess would glance his way every few minutes. "It's probably nothing," Ethan said. Greg shook his head. "Be careful, man. Office rumor says these aliens mate for life through some kind of biological bond. You don't want to give her the wrong idea." After dinner, there was dancing. Earth officials took turns dancing with the Synax delegates, showing them simple human dances. Lyria watched with obvious interest. Then, to everyone's surprise, she walked directly to Ethan. "Would you show me how humans danced?" she asked. Commander Vex stepped forward. "Princess, this is not appropriate." Lyria ignored him and held her hand out to Ethan. Feeling every eye in the room on him, Ethan reluctantly took her hand and led her to the dance floor. "I don't think this is a good idea," he whispered as they began a simple waltz. "Why not?" she asked. "I am here to learn about Earth customs." "Because I'm just a security guard, and you're a princess." Lyria's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "On my world, status is everything. Here, you say anyone can choose their path. Is that not true?" Before Ethan could answer, Lyria stopped dancing. She turned to face the room full of officials, both human and Synax. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice clear and strong. "According to the traditions of my people, I have the right to choose one potential mate before my arranged bonding." She looked directly at Ethan. "I choose this human, Ethan Martins, as my potential mate." The room fell silent. Ethan froze in shock. Commander Vex looked horrified. The Earth diplomats exchanged panicked glances, and Princess Lyria simply smiled. Chaos erupted after Princess Lyria's announcement. The Synax officials huddled together, speaking rapidly in their own language. Earth diplomats rushed to Ambassador Collins, who looked like he might faint. Commander Vex grabbed Lyria's arm. "Princess, you cannot do this. Your father." "My father gave me the right of first choice before my arranged bonding." Lyria said firmly. That is our law. Ethan stood frozen, still trying to process what had just happened. A security team surrounded him and escorted him from the room despite his protests. He was taken to a small office where he waited for nearly an hour before the door opened. Ambassador Collins entered, his face grim. Martinez, do you have any idea what you've done? I didn't do anything, sir, Ethan said. The princess just chose me. I had no warning. Collins sighed heavily. Well, the Cenax delegation is in an uproar. They've contacted King Zorlak, who is now on his way to Earth. This could destroy our newly formed alliance. Can't I just refuse? Ethan asked. It's not that simple. In Cenax culture, being chosen by royalty is a great honor. Refusing could be seen as a terrible insult. Besides, the princess claims she's had prophetic dreams about you. Dreams? About me? Collins nodded. Their species has some limited precognitive abilities, apparently. Something they don't share openly. Ethan was relieved from his duties immediately. He was sent home with strict orders not to speak to anyone about what had happened. But he couldn't just sit and wait. He called the one person he trusted, Olivia Summers, another security officer who had been part of the original mission to the Cenax homeworld. Olivia arrived at his apartment an hour later. Everyone's talking about it, she said as she sat down on his couch. You and the alien princess. That's quite a promotion from security guard. This isn't funny, Ethan said. I could cause an interstellar incident. What exactly did she say to you before she made her announcement? Ethan told Olivia about their conversation regarding choosing mates and the princess's arranged bonding. Olivia frowned. Sounds like she was looking for a way out of her arranged marriage. You were convenient. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. It was Ambassador Collins informing him that King Zorlak had arrived and demanded to see both him and Lyria immediately. The meeting took place at a secure government facility. Ethan entered a large conference room to find King Zorlak towering over everyone. The alien king's golden eyes flashed with anger. So this is the human who has caught my daughter's attention, he said, his voice colder than Ethan remembered. Princess Lyria stood nearby, her chin raised defiantly. Father, I have exercised my right of first choice. To choose a human, the king hissed. You risk our alliance with the Terek system for this. Ambassador Collins stepped forward. Your Majesty, perhaps we can find a diplomatic solution. Silence. King Zorlak thundered. This is a Cenax matter. He turned to Ethan. Do you understand what it means to be chosen by Cenax royalty? Our bonding is for life, a biological process that cannot be undone. Ethan swallowed hard. No, Your Majesty, I didn't know that. The king addressed his daughter. Explain yourself, Lyria. The princess moved closer to Ethan. I have had the dreams, father, the sacred visions. This human and I are connected in ways I cannot fully explain. For the first time, the king looked uncertain. The dreams? You are certain? Yes, father. I see him standing between our people and darkness. I see our bonding bringing strength to both our worlds. King Zorlak fell silent, studying Ethan with new interest. Lyria turned to Ethan, her voice softer. I am sorry I did not explain before making my announcement. But the dreams do not lie. Our futures are linked, Ethan Martinez, in ways that will shape the stars themselves. The next few days were a blur of meetings. Earth governments debated what to do about the situation. Some leaders wanted to encourage the relationship for the technological benefits it might bring. Others feared it could lead to problems with the Terek system that Princess Lyria mentioned. Ethan was kept isolated in a government building, given a comfortable room, but not allowed to leave. He spent hours thinking about Lyria's words. How could their futures be linked? What darkness was she talking about? Olivia was the only person allowed to visit him. She arrived one evening looking worried. I found something, she said quietly, checking to make sure no one was listening. I have a friend in the science division. They've been studying the information the Synax shared with us. And? Ethan asked. Olivia sat down beside him. The Synax have been collecting human DNA samples, not just from the diplomats and security team who visited their world, but somehow they've gotten samples from all over Earth. Ethan felt cold. Are you saying Lyria's interest in me is part of some experiment? I don't know, Olivia said, but you deserve to know what's happening. When Ethan was finally allowed to see Lyria again, they met in a garden behind the government building. Commander Vex and 2 human security officers stood at a distance, watching them closely. Is it true? Ethan asked without greeting. Has your people been collecting human DNA? Lyria didn't look surprised by the question. Yes. Why? The princess sat on a stone bench and gestured for him to join her. My people are dying, Ethan. For thousands of years, we have practiced selective breeding. Royal families only bond with other royal families, warriors with warriors, scientists with scientists. We believe this made our people stronger. But it didn't, Ethan guessed. Lyria nodded. Our genetic diversity is dangerously low. Each generation has more health problems than the last. Some Synax can no longer have children at all. She looked at him directly. Then we discovered Earth. So I'm just... What? A new breeding option. Ethan felt angry and used. No, Lyria said firmly. The genetic research was to confirm what we suspected, that humans and Synax are compatible. But my choice of you was because of my dreams. Before Ethan could respond, alarms began blaring. The security officers rushed toward them, but they were too slow. A bright light surrounded Ethan and Lyria. Ethan felt his body tingle, and suddenly they were somewhere else, inside what looked like a small spaceship. 3 Synax he had never seen before stood around them. Their skin was a darker blue than most Synax he had met. We have them, one said. Begin departure sequence. Lyria stood up, her eyes flashing. How dare you? Do you know who I am? We know exactly who you are, Princess, the Synax replied. And we know what you plan to do. The royal line must remain pure. We cannot allow you to bond with this human. The ship rumbled as it prepared to take off. Ethan looked for a weapon, something he could use. The kidnapping had happened so fast that he was still trying to process it. One of the Synax pointed a strange device at him. The human will be used for our own research, then disposed of. What happened next shocked Ethan. Lyria moved with incredible speed. She knocked the device away and struck the Synax with enough force to send him flying across the small ship. The other 2 reached for weapons, but she was faster. In seconds, all 3 kidnappers were unconscious on the floor. She turned to Ethan, breathing hard. Are you hurt? No, he said, staring at her in amazement. How did you do that? Synax royalty are trained in combat from childhood, she explained. These rebels are not the first to try to kidnap me. Ethan looked at the fallen kidnappers. You protected me. Lyria's expression softened. Of course I did. The dreams showed me that you are important, Ethan. To me. To both our peoples. Ethan and Lyria were rescued from the kidnappers' ship before it could leave Earth. When King Zorlak heard about the kidnapping attempt, he was furious. The rebels were taken into custody by Synax authorities. The king requested a private meeting with Ethan. They met in a secure room with only Commander Vex present. You showed courage during the kidnapping, King Zorlak said, studying Ethan carefully. Your daughter was the brave one, Ethan replied honestly. She saved my life. The king nodded slowly. My daughter believes the dreams she has had about you. I cannot ignore this, but neither can I simply allow her to choose a human mate without testing your worth. Testing me? Ethan asked. There is an ancient tradition among our people, the king explained. When royalty chooses a mate from outside their approved matches, that mate must prove their worth through a series of challenges. Ethan frowned. What kind of challenges? 3 trials that test your body, mind, and spirit, King Zorlak said. If you pass, you would be considered worthy of Lyria regardless of your species. And if I refuse? The king's golden eyes narrowed. Then you reject my daughter's choice, and she must proceed with her arranged bonding. The alliance with the Terek system will continue as planned. Ethan thought about Lyria's words about the prince she was supposed to marry. He is not kind. He also thought about the kidnappers and how determined some Synax were to keep their royal line pure. I'll do it, Ethan said. I'll take the challenges. The news spread quickly. Ethan was given 2 weeks to prepare for the trials. Olivia immediately volunteered to help him train. You're crazy, she told him during their first training session. You know that, right? Ethan smiled as he lifted weights. Probably. Do you even like the princess? Or are you just doing this because of her dreams about you saving the universe or whatever? Ethan paused. I don't know. She's different from anyone I've ever met. Not just because she's alien, but there's something about her. To everyone's surprise, Commander Vex also offered to help train Ethan. Why would you help me? Ethan asked the stern Synax warrior. If you are to be bonded with our princess, you should not embarrass her by failing. Vex replied simply. Meanwhile, Earth scientists made an interesting discovery. They found that a human-Synax pairing could potentially benefit both species. Synax would gain genetic diversity, while humans might gain access to the Synax's natural abilities and longer lifespan. Ambassador Collins shared this information with Ethan. The higher-ups are very interested in seeing this work out now, and he said, they're talking about you being a pioneer for human-alien relations. No pressure, Ethan muttered. The night before the first trial, Lyria came to see him. She wore simpler clothes than usual, and her green skin seemed to glow softly in the dim light. Are you ready? She asked. As ready as I can be, Ethan replied. What exactly should I expect tomorrow? Lyria shook her head. I am not allowed to tell you. The trials must be faced without preparation. She hesitated, then stepped closer to him. There is something you should know. The prince from the Terek system has arrived on Earth. He is not happy about losing his claim to me. Is he dangerous? Very, she said quietly. His name is Prince Drav. He will watch the trials tomorrow. Be careful, Ethan. When she left, Ethan tried to sleep but couldn't. He kept thinking about what would happen if he failed. Would Lyria be forced to marry someone she feared? Would the Synax continue to decline genetically? As the sun rose, Ethan prepared himself. He didn't know what challenges awaited him, but he was determined to face them. Not just for Lyria now, but for the future of both their peoples. The first trial began at sunrise. A large crowd gathered to watch. Both humans and Synax. Ethan stood in a simple black outfit provided for the challenge. Across from him sat King Zorlak on an elaborate throne. Princess Lyria was seated beside her father, her face carefully blank. Prince Drav from the Terek system stood nearby, watching Ethan with obvious hatred. The alien prince was taller than most Synax, with deep purple skin and cold eyes. The first trial tests the body, King Zorlak announced. Ethan Martins will be taken to the Wildlands and must survive there for 1 full day and night. He will have no weapons and no communication devices. Ethan's stomach tightened. The Wildlands was a large section of wilderness that had been set up inside a biodome to recreate conditions from the Synax homeworld. He had heard it contained plants and animals not found on Earth. Commander Vex approached him. Remember your training, he said quietly. Trust your instincts. Ethan was transported to the edge of the wildlands. As soon as he stepped inside, a force field activated behind him, preventing retreat. The air inside smelled strange, sweeter than Earth air, with hints of spices he couldn't name. He began walking, staying alert for danger. The plants around him were mostly purple and blue instead of green. Some moved slightly even though there was no wind. By midday, Ethan found a stream of clear water. He knelt to drink, then froze when he heard a low growl. 20 feet away stood a creature that looked like a cross between a lion and a lizard. Its scales shimmered in the artificial sunlight. Ethan slowly stood up. The creature watched him, tail swishing. Ethan remembered Vex's training about Synac's predators. Show no fear, make yourself look bigger, back away slowly. He raised his arms and began to back away. The creature followed, stalking him. When it leaped, Ethan dove to the side. The creature landed where he had been standing. Ethan grabbed a fallen branch and swung it at the predator. The beast hissed and backed up. For hours, Ethan and the creature played this dangerous game. Finally, as darkness fell, the predator seemed to lose interest and disappeared into the trees. Ethan spent the night in a small cave, cold and hungry but alive. When dawn broke, a door appeared in the force field. He had survived the first trial. The second trial began the next day. "This will test your mind," King Zorlak explained. Ethan was taken to a room with a strange table covered in glowing symbols. "This is Varric, a strategic game played by Synac's children," the king said. "You will play against 3 opponents." The first opponent was a young Synax. The game involved moving pieces across the board to capture territory. Ethan lost quickly, not understanding the rules fully. "Focus," he told himself. "Watch how they play." His second opponent was an older Synax scientist. This time, Ethan paid careful attention to the patterns and managed to last much longer before losing. His final opponent was Prince Drav himself. The Terek prince smiled coldly. "When I win, human, it will prove you are unworthy of the princess," he said. The game began. Ethan used everything he had learned from the first 2 matches. Prince Drav played aggressively, trying to overwhelm Ethan quickly. But Ethan noticed a pattern in his movements. The prince was so focused on attack that he left his defenses weak. Slowly, cautiously, Ethan worked his way around the prince's pieces. The crowd gasped when Ethan suddenly made a move that trapped Prince Drav's main piece. "That is not possible," the prince hissed. But it was. Ethan had won. Princess Lyria's face showed pride, though she remained silent. King Zorlak nodded in approval. "The final trial begins tomorrow," the king announced. "The trial of spirit, the most difficult of all." Ethan looked at Prince Drav, whose purple face had darkened with rage. The prince leaned close as he passed. "Enjoy your victory, human," he whispered. "You will not survive tomorrow." The morning of the final trial, Ethan woke feeling strange. His head hurt, and his vision was slightly blurry. He wondered if it was just stress, but a voice in his mind whispered that something was wrong. "The third trial tests your spirit," King Zorlak announced to the crowd. "It will reveal if your heart is true." Ethan was led to a circular platform. Princess Lyria watched him with concern in her golden eyes. Prince Drav stood nearby with a small smile on his face. "Drink this." Commander Vex handed Ethan a cup of glowing blue liquid. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "It will open your mind to the trial," Vex explained. "All who take the third trial must drink it." Ethan hesitated, then drank. The liquid burned his throat and made his head spin. The world around him began to fade. He fell to his knees, struggling to stay conscious. When he opened his eyes again, he was somewhere else. A dark, empty space surrounded him. In front of him stood 3 figures: King Zorlak, Princess Lyria, and Prince Drav. "Why do you seek to bond with my daughter?" King Zorlak asked, his voice echoing strangely. Ethan struggled to focus. "I didn't seek it. She chose me." "But why do you accept her choice?" the king pressed. "Is it for power? For the technology my people possess?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I accept because she deserves to choose her own path, because no one should be forced to bond with someone they fear." The king vanished. Now only Lyria and Prince Drav remained. "Choose," Lyria said, holding out her hand. "Choose me and face endless challenges. Our worlds will never fully accept us. We will fight battles every day. Prince Drav held out his hand as well. Choose to walk away. Return to your simple human life. Let Lyria fulfill her duty to her people. It is easier this way. Ethan's head pounded. Walking away would be easier. He could go back to his normal life. But then Lyria would be trapped in a bond with someone cruel, and both their peoples would lose the chance to grow stronger together. I choose the harder path, Ethan said, reaching for Lyria's hand. As their fingers touched, pain shot through Ethan's body. He screamed and fell, his vision going dark again. This time when he woke, he was back on the platform, but something was very wrong. His body felt like it was burning from the inside. He couldn't stand. He could barely breathe. He's been poisoned. Lyria cried, rushing to Ethan's side. Father, help him. King Zorlak ordered his medical team forward. They scanned Ethan with strange devices. It is Terek venom, one said. Very rare and very deadly. We have no cure for it here. Lyria turned to Prince Drav with fury in her eyes. You did this. The prince stepped back. I did nothing. Perhaps humans are simply too weak for our trials. Earth doctors were called, but they too had no idea how to treat an alien poison. Ethan was moved to a medical facility. His condition grew worse by the hour. Lyria refused to leave his side. I will not let you die, she whispered, holding his hand. Ambassador Collins entered the room with Olivia. Princess, you need to rest. You've been here for 2 days without sleep. I cannot leave him, Lyria said. I can feel him slipping away. King Zorlak came in, looking older and more tired than before. Daughter, I have been studying the ancient texts. There may be a way to save him, but it is dangerous. Tell me, Lyria demanded. The bonding process, the king said quietly. It has begun between you already. That is why you can feel his pain. If you complete it, your stronger synapse biology might help him fight the poison. But father, completing the bond while he is unconscious is not the traditional way, the king agreed. But it may be the only way to save his life. The choice is yours. Lyria looked down at Ethan's pale face. His breathing was shallow and his skin felt cold. I choose to save him, she said firmly. I choose to bond. The king nodded solemnly. Then we must begin immediately. There is little time left. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. The room around him was bright and unfamiliar. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. Then it all came flooding back. The trials, the poison, the pain. But the pain was gone now. He felt different, stronger somehow. He turned his head and saw Princess Lyria asleep in a chair beside his bed. Her green skin seemed to glow softly in the dim light. As if sensing his gaze, she opened her eyes. You're awake, she said, relief flooding her voice. What happened? Ethan asked. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, deeper than before. You were dying, Lyria explained. Prince Drav poisoned you during the 3rd trial. We completed the bonding process while you were unconscious. It was the only way to save your life. Ethan sat up, noticing how easy it felt. We're bonded now, like married. More than married by human standards, Lyria said. Our biology is now linked. My body helped yours fight the poison. Ethan looked down at his hands. His skin had a very faint blue tint to it now, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. And Prince Drav. He has been arrested for attempted murder, she said. His actions broke the sacred laws of the trials. The alliance with the Terek system has been dissolved. The door opened and King Zorlak entered, followed by Ambassador Collins. The human survives, the king said, but there was no coldness in his voice now. And he has changed. Changed how? Ethan asked. The bonding has altered you both, King Zorlak explained. You have taken on some synapse traits, while my daughter has gained some human characteristics. Ethan noticed now that Lyria's green skin was slightly less vibrant, more like a human with a green tint rather than the bright emerald it had been before. Our scientists have been studying your recovery, the king continued. The results are remarkable. The bond has made you both stronger, and it seems the same might be true for our peoples as a whole. Ambassador Collins stepped forward. The attack on you has changed everything, Ethan. Both humans and Synax have rallied around your story. People are calling you a bridge between our worlds. In the days that followed, Ethan learned more about the changes in his body. He was stronger now, faster. His senses were sharper. The doctor said he would likely live much longer than a normal human. Lyria too had changed. She had gained some human emotional responses and a stronger immune system. Their bond had given each of them the best traits of both species. 1 month after the poisoning, Ethan and Lyria stood together at a formal ceremony. Both human and Synax officials watched as they completed the public part of their bonding ritual. Today marks a new beginning, King Zorlak announced to the crowd. Not just for my daughter and her chosen mate, but for all our peoples. Ethan wore formal Synax robes, while Lyria wore a combination of Synax and human styles. They faced each other and spoke the traditional words of bonding in both languages. After the ceremony, they met with Olivia and Commander Vex, who had become unlikely friends during the crisis. So what happens now? Olivia asked. We're going to establish a joint human Synax colony, Ethan explained. A place where our peoples can live and work together. A symbol of unity. And the first place where others like us can live without fear or judgment, Lyria added. Commander Vex, who had once been so cold to Ethan, bowed his head respectfully. I have requested to lead the security forces for your new colony, he said. As evening fell, Ethan and Lyria stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The stars were coming out above them. Do you regret accepting my choice? Lyria asked quietly. Ethan took her hand, feeling the connection between them that went beyond the physical. Not for a second, he said. In the distance, a shooting star streaked across the sky. But Ethan knew it wasn't really a star. It was another ship arriving from a distant world, coming to meet the strange new couple that had changed the future for 2 species forever.